And you're welcome to yet another edition of Unfiltered Conversation on Clevenard.com. All right, my name is Frank Mudia, and I co-host Clevenard.com is an online social platform created with a vision to bridge the world of African tourism for the growth of the continent. So if you'd like to sign up with us, please do so on www.clevenard.com. All right, today I'm having a discussion with a perfect gentleman, one of those experts in the fashion industry. All right, he is the founder of Global Fashion Management and also the founder London Fashion Business Academy. Please join me welcome Mr. Thierry Bayle. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Thierry.
Franca, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. We'll start with a brief introduction of yourself. Please tell us about yourself.
Well, because of the value I bring and what the clients are telling me, I really need to go back, and tell you that my father was a French diplomat. So I was really lucky, to live in 7 countries before the age of 18, including various European countries, as well as Madagascar, Venezuela, the US. So I'm French with an American accent. So hopefully that will be acceptable. And I would say what happened is that, after doing a business school in France, went to live in Singapore, Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent. And then I really took responsibilities in the fashion world, both by managing a business in London. Then I went to set up a business in the US.
Sorry, please, I'll let you to continue with that. Let me come in there. For the son of a diplomat, you are into fashion. You have so much zeal for the fashion industry. What prompted your interest in it? Why are you in the fashion industry?
Some kind of an export mission when I was a student in my business school. Somebody told me, yeah, Thierry, I'm happy to give you 20,000 French francs, so roughly, let's say $3,000, and please go and open the Japanese market for him. And that's when I started. And it happened that, his clients were already people like, Kenzo and a lot of, I would say, high-end designers. And I was able to follow it up. And then when I had the opportunity, in 93 to go and start working in fashion, well, it joined both things.
But you are into, basically, when we had a chat, discovered that you are so interested in the African fashion and African fashion designers. And for a Frenchman, it is for most of us, we are like, why would it be so? So if you are into the African fashion, what are your main focus? What are your aims? What do you intend to achieve with having the interest in African fashion?
Alors, at my core, in terms of mission and purpose, and what drives me every day, is first of all is making sure that we help people, especially those who struggle. And inside the fashion world, whether Africa or not, I feel there's a big lack of honesty and transparency. I see the same mistakes, happening every season. And those mistakes are avoidable if only we were to share all this knowledge and expertise and put it on the table available to everybody. And that's my mission, try to roll it out. Why Africa? I was fortunate, apart from, working closely with some Nigerian in London, having been also close to some African designers. And it happened that I also visited, African Fashion Week London. And I saw that every time you were, looking at some African designers, you had mostly, 2 kind of a focus. One, which could be maybe ethnic, and others, which would be certainly maybe an element of ethnicity, but otherwise very commercial. And so you could realize that not only those African designers were, I would say, very talented in their collection, but also very commercial, meaning being able to appeal very, very easily to a Western consumer, whether in Europe, in the US, and of course beyond. So my question is, they have the talent. Why don't we help them achieve those dreams?
But in your conversation, you did made mention of mistakes, all right, in the African fashion industry. I like to shed light on that. If you can just enumerate the different kinds of mistakes and then what you think can be done to rectify these mistakes.
Alors, I'm tempted to first start super easy. And I would say, what would be the ABC of fashion? And I'm going to start with the C. C will stand for creativity. And very often you'll see that over at 90%, all those fashion businesses start with, a business owner who's the designer. And that is mastered. The B for me stands for business. Does the business have a business mindset? Do they understand operations? And then the A stands for A team. If you want to set up a business and scale it up, you need a team of good people, having the right people in your organization. And that is also a big challenge because when you're often a creative person, managing people is not easy. And you know that it is hard to manage people. So this is where, I make sure to bring value added. With the pandemic, Franca, what has happened as well is that we've realized that people were looking into improving their businesses, improving the performance of their businesses, people performance, project performance. And so what has really changed also in my own focus, it was hard for me to sometimes push it with through that angle in the past, is that people were more interested today in not only having a strategy and great execution, but also, Thierry, how can I improve my management skills and techniques? How can I improve my leadership skills? Having emotional intelligence and many other things. And the third point, Franca, and I hope we'll have the opportunity to talk about some case studies, is mindset. Because how do it's all about making the right decision every day, every month, every season. And that's not easy. And sometimes we have beliefs which are not right. And that's the reason why also we see, apart from maybe the lack of honesty and transparency, why we see some mistakes happening every single season.
All right. Well, you made mention of case studies and all that. I think you didn't know just one of the case studies. Can you give us more of the case studies? Let's get a total package of what you are actually saying.
Mm-hmm. Look, I was really, fortunate also to, work with Nigerian designers in London and for coming from Nigeria. I've also seen a lot of, African and other countries, coming to a trade show in London, in Paris, in the US. And you can see basically that there's always, a lack of preparation. And there is often the belief that the product in itself will generate the sale. What do my clients tell me? Thierry, the product in itself is going to represent 15% of the sale. The rest is all the other, whether it's going to be marketing, whether it's going to be your intonation, whether it's going to be your negotiation skills, whether it's going to be your paperwork, whether it's going to be your promptness in answering emails or picking up phone calls or not, or being slow on customer service. All those will matter to a consumer or a buyer, trade buyer, I mean. So, what kind of challenges do we have is, let's start, from a buyer's perspective. I was working with, a good size retailer doing several million with, 2 stores, 1 online operation. And basically he was buying a multi-label store. He was buying from different brands. And during Black Friday, he had instruction from the brand to say, look, those specific goods you're going to buy should not be discounted during Black Friday. So, okay, he follows the instruction of the brand, except that the brand behind his back decides to discount at 30% those goods. But does my client, with all hands on deck during Black Friday, he's got to, he does the same thing. Why? Because otherwise he would be overstock and having a stock not being able to be depleted after Black Friday, because that's when a lot of the sales happen. So when I called him after Black Friday, he was really, upset. And so I asked him, like you would ask him, I'm sure. Well, I'm going to call him John, if you don't mind. John, what do we do? And it was like, there's nothing we can do. And I asked him, why? Because they're too big. So his mindset was, Thierry, because it's a large company, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to be able to challenge them and basically make them understand that they should have never done minus 30% on those goods, which were not supposed to be discounted by anybody, neither him nor the brand. And so, I've asked him, okay, so, do we risk anything? No. So I recommended, honestly, something that, well, I would think, maybe everybody would think about, but actually, no. I did 3 emails. It took me an hour and a half. And the consequence of that is, we got 7,756.91 pounds back. So, potentially around, to $10,000 just on that hour and a half. But beyond the fact that it would pay for, several months of support, advising, mentoring, what was really interesting, Franca, is that after that, he went on his own to basically challenge other brands who did exactly similar kind of things to him. So his mindset completely changed from it's impossible to it is possible.
Possible.
And that's what we need to, create. Afterwards, I feel that sometimes we need to start at a high level. So I had a situation with a government recently, and we need also to change the way governments.
Mr. Terry, I would like to, let's stop there. We are going to come to the government, okay? We are going to discuss the role or the role of the government in making sure that this industry prosper for the growth of not just the designer, for the country as well. But let me ask a question. So based on what you said products are supposed to sell themselves, or most probably that products should sell themselves. All right, now you have an encounter with some designers from Africans. All right, these people have good design. These people knows what they are doing. They are good in what they do. All right, but most of these people, their products are not really selling in the market. What do you think is responsible for that? I mean, what should they do to be able to break even?
So what should they do to break into, let's say, in Europe?
Yeah. Let's start from, why are their products, all right, not getting sold in the markets, all right, even when their designs are very good? How come they are not getting massive sales? And then what should they do to be able to overcome that challenge?
Sometimes it's just I would say nobody have been advising them on what is required, whether they develop a business model around wholesale, retail, or online. Roughly, unless you're very big, you're going to do 3 potential strategies or pick one of those 3 business models: wholesale, retail, online. But you can very often only pick one unless you're very established and you have the means, financial and human, to feed people and money in each business model. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to go a little bit deeper so that people understand that to each situation you could have a slightly different answer. Because
please go ahead.
Because otherwise, this is where the challenge is in fashion, Franca, is that people, because they don't give you enough information or they don't authorize you to ask enough questions, they are given a solution which doesn't make sense, sometimes not even short term. Why do people call me Dr. Fashion? I don't have any medical certificate. But what I do very well is going to ask them questions, the right questions, to make sure I understand their customer, the way I understand their finances, their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to people, their team, their partners, the business model, and also having a clear destination. Where are you trying to head to over the next 6, 12, or 18 months? Because when you take a taxi, Franca, I guarantee you that you must tell me, Thierry, of course I give an address to the driver. So please use that same discipline to say, Thierry, what's my destination when I'm going to Europe? So first we have the situation of some African designer who may have a very ethnic product. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. However, the question is your consumer, let's say in the US and in Europe, where of course, if you go to your diaspora, it will be some kind of easy sell. If you try to expand, I believe, outside, potentially you're going to feel there is some kind of resistance. And I'm going to tell you what I did with an Italian brand, because it's the same thing. And the same things apply to some people in Asia when we talk batik, some kind of a very special ethnic product from there. Is that this lady from Italy, she was a great painter of Italian landscape. And she was putting those design on her dresses, which I think is totally fine. But then she was doing the same thing on tops and bottoms. But every time she was marketing the product, the design was, the picture of her painting was both on the tops and the bottoms. And for a woman to be able to take that, you've got to be super powerful. You've got to be confident. You've got to be, good in your body. And that requests a lot from anybody. However, as soon as I told her, look, why don't you do it more simply initially? Just put your painting on just the top and picture it with basically a bottom, which will just be plain white, plain black, or the reverse. And then suddenly sales increased. So my question is, how can you use your ethnic, designs and make it maybe toned down initially to appeal to a more Western and a broader audience that you have? Okay. If it's if otherwise it's a kind of Western product and you're trying to sell it to Europe and the US, then there isn't any specific issue because you will be able to sell. However, you need to understand that whether it's consumer, B2C, business to consumer, or whether it's B2B, wholesale, that means you're selling to a boutique and the boutique is going to sell to the consumer. You need to clearly identify who you need to sell to. But I can promise you, over 30%, especially among young companies, they don't have any clarity and nobody's telling them, even sometimes, even if they go out of some prestigious schools, they're not telling them how to find their audience. And unless you know your competition, unless you understand the brands which sits alongside your own, you're going to be, unfortunately, delaying your ability to be successful. So all this, honestly, is easy to operate, is easy to communicate, but that's what we need to do if we don't want people to waste their time. Because I see every season people going to a trade show, but it's the wrong trade show. It's the wrong section of the show. Afterwards, we have...
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Because there is another issue, which is logistics. So I don't know whether you want me to go also in another.
I think I'd like to take that as a question later on, so that you really elaborate on that. But let me take this question. All right, you've worked with African fashion designers. All right, you see one or two things they are doing. Most of them complaining that there are really no more skilled sales, and then there is this challenge of having to bridge the diaspora and the African world in the world of fashion. All right. Mm-hmm. What are your offerings to these people? What are your offerings to the African fashion designers to make sure that things or the challenges they are facing right now, which is the inability for them to make more sales, is rectified?
Yeah. I would say from all what my clients told me and what I actually see is this ability to have had, since the beginning, first, apart from working with brands and retailer every single month for over 25 years. And when we work with brands and, business owners, whether it's a brand or a retailer, and of course I work with manufacturers as well. I've been working with trade shows and many of the other stakeholders, whether fashion tech, service providers. Mm-hmm. But when you deal with the business owner, you discuss the funding, you discuss the business plan, you discuss the investors, you discuss wholesale, retail, online, you discuss sales, marketing, admin, finance, production, processes, tools, you discuss, management, leadership, mindset, everything. So you start compiling a lot of data, a lot of case studies. And then it becomes very easy for me to basically understand what are the golden rules to follow and what are the mistakes to avoid. And that's why one day, a client told me, it's super nice, Thierry, you care more about my business than I do. I do generally care. I think it's because of, how I was educated and the different countries I had to live into and having to change, put back all my counters to zero every 2 to 3 years. But it's all, when I ask the client, what do you mean? He told me, Thierry, you see the green flag where I see a red flag. You see a red flag where I see a green flag. So it's my ability to see a perspective you don't manage to see because either you want to be over positive, but you don't see where the danger is going to be coming from, or you had a negative experience and then suddenly it's like, but yeah, I don't want to hear about it. And that's a real danger. And you remember when I talked about Dr. Fashion, a big mistake I see is making sure that when I ask questions and I do some tests with you, what's my objective? It's not just to give you the medicine. It's not just about, providing you with a prescription, a solution. It has to make sure it is long-term. Because for me, if you tell me, Thierry, I'm from Nigeria, I'm from South Africa, I'm from Morocco, I'm trying to sell to Europe, I need to ask you as well, okay, I'm going to teach you how to sell in Europe. Could you be going to the US over the next 6 to 18 months? No. Okay. Because if you do, I need to teach you the tweaks that you need to make the moment you go to the US. Because the American market, even though it may look the same, there's the same players per se, but their mindset, their operations, the way they see things is totally different. So the more I can teach you that, train you on that, and help you sell to an American audience versus a European audience is critical for me. So it's going to be, this ability to have that holistic approach to the fashion industry and being able to, show you the golden rules to follow, the mistakes to avoid. And that, if you understand what I'm going to say, that could take an hour, can take 4 hours. So very quickly. Afterwards, it's really helping the client in the execution phase because it's both an element of, being a trusted advisor, expert, but, for a lot of companies, they still need to receive help to execute the idea because that's what really matters today. It's not just the idea. It's how do you implement, execute it. So these are really the two key things. And afterwards, of course, I use the network when the moment is right, when we know we have the right product to introduce them to the right people in Europe or in the US, whether it's a buyer or whether it's also a service provider because they need a sales agent, they need a distributor, or they need a digital marketing company or a logistics company, for example.
But I want to believe that you've worked with maybe some African designers from the African continent. Can you relate with us any of your success story so far and how have the African been able to how do I put it now, to embrace the concept you're selling to them? Has it been difficult? Has it been easy penetrating the Africans to bring this necessary and the much needed help to them?
It took us 1 year to walk. It took us maybe 18 years, to raise a child.
Exactly.
So of course, building a brand is not going to happen overnight either. So whether, you have to make sure on the other hand that, every season or every month or every week, you build up, you add a brick to the house, of course, because it's the same kind of concept. So, whether it's Anita Bell, whether it's Dexman shirts, it's making sure that, we share, I would say, the right tools to be able to grow the business. And that means also that, we focus on things that are not natural for some of the designers, especially at the beginning, in the sense that when you wouldn't take a plane from Nigeria to New York by night if there wasn't a dashboard in the plane. Well, same thing for the business. We need to understand where our cash flow is. We need to understand how many clients we have, what's the level of the stock. Is it turning fast enough? So those are things, that I can implement straight away with the clients for them to see the return on investment.
All right. Return on investments. Can you speak more on that, please? Return on investment. How does that really affect the African fashion designers or those in the business of fashion? Can you just maybe in 1 or 2 sentences?
Of course. I would say if I take a young designer, startup company, what they fail to do is to say, I have a great product, I have a dream, I'm committed to it, but I'm going to spend all my time on just the product. No, I'm sorry. you have to spend every week an opportunity to build the sales, whether it's marketing to generate sales or whether it's actually sales. You still have to do it, because the sooner you start, the sooner you will see incoming sales in your business. If you're more established, you still need to make sure that you understand whether you have more flexibility on your pricing. You have some people who they are established for 5, 10, 15 years, but they only really have one price point. They never thought about having an entry price point or a premium price point to basically expand their business with a new audience. You have people who could have 15 years experience doing trade show just in Europe. And when they attend my 4 or 8 hour workshop on the US, they tell me, Thierry, we don't even do what you're recommending we do in Europe. And what they meant by that is, Thierry, it's so well done, so well smartly thought by Americans that we should have done it in Europe as well. That means the logic, the process that you're selling for the US, we should have used it in Europe. So they've been 15 years in the business. And I remember a case study where the person had a mentor. So, very smart people, profitable company, but they realized that there can be completely two different ways to operate fashion. And why quickly on one little point? You go to the US, it's about money, money, money. You have to use every second, every minute of their time wisely. And so that's why when you go to an American trade show, you can't be British and talk about the weather for 20 minutes. In 1 to 3 minutes, you have to drive the conversation in such a way that you know exactly who is in front of you. Because yes, it could be a department store buyer and you may receive a $50,000 order. Yes, it could be just an independent, but having 10 stores, so not a small guy. Maybe just a one store operation. And yeah, maybe a $2 or $5 or $10,000 order. But then it could be the press, but it could be a student. If you don't make a choice, and suppose you're alone, Franca, and you've got two people coming at the same time, you just take one and you ignore the other one? What if the one you're ignoring is the department store client? What do you do?
Exactly.
That's it.
So most of that is wisdom is profitable in handling and they know who your target audience actually is. But that will bring us to logistics now. And then you discover that most of African designers, all right, thank you for interest in African designers. So this is what there are most African designers, they have these products, all right, but the logistics of having to connect with the diaspora market or the European market is not really there. So let's talk about logistics now. What kind of help can you offer in this regard?
I would say then the conversation, again, my mindset is always to say, Franca, Mr. and Mrs. Designer, whatever you decide, have more than one alternative. Don't let anybody, including myself, to sell you one solution only, because what if it's the wrong one? So I'm going to say, are we talking maybe a government where we're going to be setting up the foundation for long-term, exponential growth for African fashion? Are we talking basically a single company working on its own, or maybe a group of companies through maybe some kind of collective platform? So different, operators, maybe different solutions. What I would recommend.
We'll talk about the government later, okay? We'll talk about the role of the government later and making all this for. But let's talk about the single or the individual designer now, and then with the group of designers.
Perfect.
Let's talk on
that's wonderful. So if you're a single designer, again, there's going to be the B2B, B2C, meaning either you're targeting just consumers or you're targeting, trade buyers. So people who are going to buy for their store, and then suddenly you should be selling at least, from $500 to $2,000 or even $5,000 per order every time, people place an order with you. If it's consumer, then it's potentially a bit more tricky. Why? Well, because you're going to have a freight cost, a shipping cost, from north, the middle or South Africa, going to Europe or the US, and that could easily be $20, $30, $40, $50, maybe $100, $150. And if it's only a single item, the consumer is going to say, well, why am I paying so much for transport when the product is only, maybe the cost of the products is basically only 2 times or 3 times, the freight. So if the ratio between the cost of shipping and the price of the product is basically too small, it's not going to work. For example, we lost a lot of the sales between the UK and Europe. Why? Because today, when the UK tries to ship goods to Europe, what happens? Suppose you ship a 50-pound product and you pay a 10 to 20-pound custom clearance fee. Not even duty, custom clearance only. No consumer is going to say, I'm going to buy something at 50. I'm going to have to pay even 15 of custom clearance and maybe another 5 for shipping. That's way too much. Why? Because people want to pay shipping that will represent 5-10% of the price of the product. So already ourselves, within Europe, at large, we have been losing business between the two. So this will be obviously a challenge. And this is why you have to find a way to scale up your business in such a way that you can ship in bulk to Europe or the US, and then being able to do a local delivery to your customers, whoever they are, so that you can basically minimize those extra costs to facilitate, easy selling. Well, in addition to, afterwards, when you sell in some countries, you may have some regulations, some laws where you have to authorize, return of goods. So I don't know whether today is the right moment to discuss that, but it has to be, of course, addressed. If it's on the trade, then things are much more easy to do. But this is where I want all of our, creative people and companies in fashion and some other, I believe consumer goods, for what I hear, is to understand that, when you ship internationally, you can split the responsibility between you, the seller, Africa, and you, the buyer, in Europe or the US. And so you have Incoterms, which basically splits the responsibility of who pays what, who takes the risk on what. And those Incoterms are really important, because I would urge all our fashion people to say, look, if you're shipping goods to Europe or the US, I want you to use primarily, what we call DDP, delivered duty paid. Because the alternative of CIF or FOB or X Works are great, but they make the life of the buyer challenging. And because of that, they will have the tendency to buy less, not more. And by the way, I would say sometimes zero, not even less, zero. And this is experience. Real.
Yeah, I think let's drop that, or let's stop that. Then definitely this series is going to continue some other time, and then we would like to have you in Africa, have you to come in to teach fashion designers the best way to handle their products and how to make maximum profit from it. But I want to get to which is the role of the government. All right, the role of the government in making sure things work well for these people. So should they expect funding from the government, or what role is the government supposed to play in the lives of these African fashion designers?
If I was to sum it up in just a couple of words, Franca, I would say fashion is going to make your country shine. Because, you know what, I'm French. I would love you to take pictures of the French baguette, but you're not going to share it with friends. Look at the millennials, look at, the Gen Z and others. As soon as they have a picture or video of a fashion product, they will share it. So your African designers will be able to basically, shine internationally. And of course, it will not only create revenue, foreign currency for your own country, but you will, of course, help tourism as well. Because now you put, South Africa, Morocco, Nigeria, Ghana, Egypt on the fashion map. So that's the first thing I would like to say. I think fashion also takes an extra 4 boxes, which are critical, which I understand governments want to do, which is, first, it creates some kind of regional integration, meaning you help ultimately people to exchange goods, make sales at a regional level. I feel fashion also will actually create a stronger ecosystem. So there's going to be also that element, because fashion cannot survive, without manufacturing, without digital,
Exactly.
without photographers, and hairstylists, and all that. And therefore, you're not just pushing an industry, the fashion industry. You are also promoting a lot of other, ultimately stakeholders and businesses which are here to help support and drive, the fashion industry. The second
But
thing
I think
is,
it's okay. Go ahead, please.
yeah, the second point is financial inclusion. They will start making money. They will ultimately, have a better life. And those people are not necessarily the one who are greedy for itself, because they're here to sustain their family, create the next season's collection, and they want to give more and more all the time to their followers. So they need, and so financial inclusion is the second thing. The third one is trade agenda. That's it. We're going to grow export, because fashion is about not just building your home domestic market, but you're going to also build international sales, and therefore creating foreign currency, bringing dollars, euros, to the business and to the country. And the fourth one, I think, is around gender equality, inclusion, because very often it could be women, it could be other underprivileged people. So it really ticks those four boxes, unlike many other industries. And
All right, thank you so much. Are you adding to that?
no, so I would say it's making sure that they see the interest of promoting the fashion industry, but in a new way, because I haven't seen really a government who was not investing in fashion differently than just showcasing. And when you invest money purely on showcasing, you are making, for me, a big mistake. And I'm happy to explain it today if you wish.
No, we don't have time for that. But we are, in fact, way behind time, and we want you to leave us with a message. What is a Thierry's message to African fashion designers? Let us hear a last message for the African fashion designers.
Look, I would say that, first of all, your fashion success is no more about what you know, it's about what you don't know. So make sure that you are on the learning every single day. You have that beautiful proverb that I use all the time. If you want to go far, go together. However, the first part, if you want to go fast, go alone. I would say, please, after 25 years over in the business, go alone maybe, because the cost of a mistake is going to have an impact on your business, and not necessarily the positive one that we would expect. Now, you know what? Your competition is making the same mistake every season. So if together we work in such a way that you are aware of the golden rules to follow, you are aware of the mistakes to avoid, I can tell you, you have an opportunity to grab market share and to have sales, not just in Africa, but internationally, because your design that I've seen season after season has an appeal to a Western customer. So my question is, let's do it, because otherwise I feel we're going to be delaying the opportunity to take that seat on the world map.
All right, thank you so much, Thierry. Thank you for being my guest on this program today. It was good having you with us.
Well, Franca, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
All right, and viewers, we draw the curtain here for today on this very edition. So next week when we come your way again with another guest on this program, I remain Franca. You have a blessed day.